Hi boys and girls. Today I'm going to show you a Matreshka, and I'm going to read a story about a Matreshka. The story today is about being safe, about using kind words, and also trusting that there's going to be help if there's trouble. The helper in our story today is a Matreshka. A Matreshka is a doll that was made in Russia, and inside of each doll is another doll. And another doll. And another doll. Until there's a teeny, tiny doll. And that is the last doll, the teeniest, tiniest little doll. The story is a folk tale from Russia, and in it is a very famous character in Russia called Baba Yaga. She's an old lady who lives in the woods. And one of the dangerous places for children in Russia was to go into the woods. So this story is called a folk tale, and it's called Matreshka. And it's written by Becky Hickox Ayers, and it's illustrated by Alexei Nachev. Matreshka. Close the book. Many years ago, in the forest of Russia, lived an old man with his granddaughter, Kata. Sometimes Kata walked the long path to the town of Vyaka and to trade grandfather's wooden spoons and bowls for food. One day in late autumn, as she was returning from such a trip, she saw a woman coming slowly down the path towards her. "Please," said the woman, "do you have any food to spare?" When Kata gave her a loaf of bread and a piece of cheese, the woman handed her something in return. "Here," she said, "take this little wooden doll I carved and painted her myself, and her name is Matreshka." Kata tucked the doll into her apron and started out again. Darkness came early as storm clouds gathered. Large snowflakes began sifting through the canopy of the fir, and soon the ground was covered and the air thick. For several hours she struggled on as the wind grew wilder and colder, until at last she saw a faint light flickering through the trees. With the last of her strength, she forced her near-frozen feet to carry her closer. It was a house, the strangest she had ever seen. It stood on giant chicken legs and was surrounded by a high wooden fence. She stumbled through the open gate, and she knocked on the door. A tall, thin woman opened it. "Come in, child," she exclaimed as she pulled Kata into the kitchen with her long, bony fingers. "It is a lucky thing you happened upon Baba Yaga's house. I am the only one who lives in this part of the forest. Warm yourself by the stove and drink some tea while I build a fire in the guest room." As soon as the woman left, Kata heard a muffled little voice. "Let me out," it said, and she looked round and she didn't see anyone. "Let me out," insisted again the voice. Finally, she realized that the voice came from her pocket. It was the wooden doll. Kata lifted Matreshka from her apron, and the doll hopped up close to the fire, holding out her tiny hands to the warmth. "I was as cold can be. Now may I please have a little tea?" So Kata held the glass down to her, and the doll took dainty sips, but she jumped back into the apron pocket when Baba Yaga returned. There now, all ready. You must be very tired. Let me show you to your room. The old woman led Kata up the stairs and down several long halls to a small room where she fell into an exhausted sleep. When the bright sun awoke her, Kata hurried to the door of her room to be on her way, but it wouldn't open. "Help!" she called through the little window in the door. Baba Yaga appeared a few minutes later, but instead of opening the door, she peered through the window and she laughed. "What? Wanting to leave so soon? I'm afraid you can't. The ingredients for my magic spell are not quite ready. But don't worry, my dear, it won't take long. I do believe you will make a lovely goose for next Sunday's dinner." After Baba Yaga's face disappeared from the window, Kata pulled and tugged on the door, but it wouldn't budge. "Let me try," said the little voice from the apron. So Kata lifted Matreshka from her pocket, and the doll replied, "Matreshka, Matreshka, I may be small, but I'm just as handy as someone tall. Lift me up to see out the door, and in a moment we'll know more." Kata set the doll in the window of the door. Matreshka leaned out and then hopped in excitement. "Ha! There's a latch holding the key. If I could reach it, I'd set us free." "Here," said Kata, "I'll tie my scarf around you and lower you down." Within moments, the door was open, and Kata stood in the hallway, wondering which way to go. All the doors looked alike, and the first one she opened screeched so loudly on its hinges that the dog in the yard started barking. "If only you were a little smaller," she said to the Matreshka, "you'd be able to roll under each door and find the way out." The doll winked and said, "Matreshka, Matreshka, I'm oh so small, but not the smallest one of all." With that, Matreshka spun around 3 times and popped open, and out popped another Matreshka doll, smaller than the first. Ooh. She scurried down the hall, rolling under each door until she found the one to the stairs. Kata opened it very slowly and tipped down to the kitchen. The witch was nowhere to be seen, and the door to the yard stood open. They crept to the fence, but here they found a gate locked tight with no key this time. Just then the dog barked again, and Baba Yaga came running from the forest behind the house with a basket full of mushrooms. "Oh, Matreshka," cried Kata, "if only one of you was a little smaller and you could put your arm inside the keyhole and perhaps undo the lock." With this, the second Matreshka said, "Matreshka, Matreshka, I'm oh so small, but not the smallest one of all." She spun around 3 times, and out popped the third doll, smaller than the second. Kata lifted up to the keyhole, and the third Matreshka had it opened in just a moment. Kata scooped up the 3 dolls and ran into the woods, but the witch was soon close behind, close enough to cast a binding spell that made it impossible for Kata to run any further. She watched helplessly as Baba Yaga laid a circle of magic rope around her and the dolls. "There now," cackled the witch. "No one inside the magic circle can step over the rope, and only someone on the outside can move it. So I guess you'll stay put while I'll go back and get the things I need to turn you into a goose." Kata and the dolls tried for several minutes to step over the rope, but they couldn't. "Oh, Matreshka," sighed Kata, "if only one of you were a little smaller, you could climb down this mouse hole and find a way to the other side." The Matreshka clapped her hands and said, "Matreshka, Matreshka, I'm oh so small, but not the smallest one of all." She spun around and opened up and hopped. Out hopped an even smaller doll. This fourth Matreshka crawled down the hole. Although she went as fast as she could, they could hear Baba Yaga returning by the time the doll had disappeared at the other end of the burrow just beyond the magic circle. She quickly opened the circle of rope. But before Kata could go 3 steps, Baba Yaga's magic once again brought her to a stop. Now the witch was in a rage. She was really angry. "You miserable child! I will not wait for Sunday. I am going to have you for dinner tonight." Just as Baba Yaga started chanting her magic spell, Matreshka saw the fourth Matreshka moving her lips and spinning. "Matreshka, Matreshka, I'm oh so small, but we need the smallest one of all." The smallest one, the tiniest one. What's going to happen? The last Matreshka was no taller than a thumbnail. She scrambled up Baba Yaga's dress. She perched in her ear, and she began whispering. And this confused the witch, and she kept muddling the words of her spell. "Kachinka, Pakita, magic juice. I now turn Taka into a goose." But of course, since Baba Yaga had said the name wrong, Kata did not turn into a goose. Baba Yaga's temper increased. She stamped her foot and she said, "Hennery, pennery, whirl and twirl. I now turn Kata into a girl." This didn't work either. By now Baba Yaga was red all over, and she screamed the next spell, with the smallest Matreshka still whispering in her ear. "Floppity, moppity, grinnin' gray, grog, Baba Yaga is now a frog." This time the spell worked. As all the Matreshkas hopped together into Kata's pocket, a very angry frog bounded away. And later that day, Kata found the path leading back to her grandfather's cottage. From that time on, she spent many happy hours playing with the wooden dolls. And although Kata never again got lost in the forest, she always carried her Matreshka in her pocket, just in case. The end.